Christmas in April.
Welcome back to Every Disney Movie Ever. My name is Jess and I'm watching Every Disney Movie Ever. Today I have Mariah.
Hello.
She is back so soon because she's living with me, and I was like, hey, you want to be in this video? And she was like, yeah, sure.
So here I am.
Yes, although it's May 4th by the time you guys are getting this, and it's April 9th for us, so who knows what's going on by then. But as of future events, you're still going to be with us.
How's the future? Is it better? I hope so, because work sucks.
I know. Late night. Come. You left me roses by the stairs. Gonna get copyrighted. Say it ain't so. We're talking about the Santa Claus today. And let me just say before we get started, I desperately did not want to watch a Christmas movie.
I didn't either.
Yeah, when I had to watch Christmas movies in, like, January and February, it was still, like, I was like, okay, I'm fine, like, whatever.
Right.
Oh, but this past Monday, when it was like, you have to watch a Santa Claus, I was like, I don't want to watch a Christmas. But then, like, once you're into it, it's like, okay, like, I'm fine, let's get it over with.
But I feel like because it wasn't Christmas, I, like, judged it super hard, and I was probably a little bit more critical because it wasn't Christmas and wasn't, like, in that Christmassy spirit of, like, yay, I'm watching a movie that I've always watched, like, every single year since, like, the time it came out, and
yeah,
so I
it's
feel like,
April during a pandemic.
Yeah.
We were probably a little bit like... The Santa Claus is a 1994 theatrical release. It's directed by John Pasquin, cinematography by Walt Lloyd, editing by Larry Bach, music by Michael Convertino, and it's written by Leo Benvenuti and Steve Rudnick. John Pasquin is best known for Home Improvement, Miss Congeniality 2, Armed and Fabulous, LA Law, and this.
Walt Lloyd is best known for Sex, Lies, and Videotape, The Perfect Storm, CSI Miami, and Empire Records.
Larry Bach I covered in the video about the Mighty Ducks. The link will be in the description.
Michael Convertino is best known for Bull Durham, What to Do in Denver When You're Dead, and Wakewood.
Leo Benvenuti and Steve Rudnick are a writing team, so they are both best known for Kicking and Screaming, Space Jam, Damon, and this. The film stars Tim Allen, Eric Lloyd, Wendy Crewson, Judge Reinhold, and David Krumholtz. Tim Allen plays Scott Calvin / also Santa Claus, and he is best known for Toy Story, Home Improvement, Galaxy Quest, and this.
Eric Lloyd plays Charlie, and he's best known for Dustin Checks In, Jesse, and this trilogy.
Wendy Crewson plays Laura, and she's best known for Air Force One, The Covenant, Room, and The Sixth Day.
Judge Reinhold plays Neal, and he's best for Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and this.
David Krumholtz plays Bernard, and he's best known for The Deuce, The Plot Against America, Numbers, and this.
The Santa Claus was filmed in the Toronto area, and Oakville served as Lakeside, Illinois.
It took $22 million to make, and it made $189 million.
The film has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it got pretty decent reviews. In the original release, Scott Calvin has a line where he says, call 1-800-SPANK-ME, and there was quite a bit of backlash from it, so it was removed from the film and hasn't been put back.
You took notes.
I did take notes.
The first.
It is the first. So, first of all, this was probably the first time I ever, like, understood the title, because you said, I never thought, or I never realized Claus was actually spelled without an E at the end, and I was like, oh, interesting, okay.
And that's why, like, even on, like, the DVD cover, the E is, like, hanging.
Yes. And then when Scott gets to the North Pole and they start talking about the Santa Claus, like the clause of the contract, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it's not the Santa Claus, like the person Santa Claus, it's the Santa Claus. And I was like, whoa, that's the first time I've ever realized that, and I'm 25 years old and have watched that in my entire life. So
also the title right at the very beginning, like, highlights the E. It, like, does the Santa Claus in that horrible font, and then it does it in the very, like, squiggly Christmas font, and it does, like, a whole highlight of the E. And, like, that's when I realized it on Monday when I was watching it. I was like, oh, duh!
Yes.
It's like, wow, to be 26 and understand things.
I was
Like,
today years old. So obviously the movie starts out where they're at a Christmas party and Scott and this other woman are like the head salespeople, and so they're being recognized at the Christmas party, and the woman like steps up first and she starts to like talk and like want to thank people, and then Scott so rudely just pushes her aside and he's like, and we don't have time for all of that, but yeah, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, wow, no wonder he's divorced.
Yeah, the movie definitely establishes very early on that, I mean, obviously Scott is like the antithesis of Santa.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
But I also, like, with that being said, they don't show him growing. It's just like all of a sudden he's Santa and he's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't have him like learn any kind of lesson. He just is all of a sudden nice because he's Santa. Which, like, and he's fighting it a lot of the time, but then, like, he finally accepts it. But there's no, like, actual, like, growth lesson. It's just, like, he's fighting against it and then finally accepts it and he's nice now. Mm-hmm. Which is a big problem for me. Like, at least give me some growth. Yeah.
I would agree. And, it's interesting, like, while I was watching this time around, like, obviously I was a lot more critical watching now.
I'm also always more critical when I watch it for the project.
Right, and I feel like I haven't, like, watched this movie, like, fully in a very long time. Yeah. And, because every time at Christmas we just put it on, it's on in the background, we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna watch this, but it's like, I already know what happens, I don't need to watch it, but then watching it as an adult, it's like, wow, this is kind of problematic. My, like, first impressions of Scott is, like, obviously I know that he's divorced and all that kind of stuff, so I was like, wow, not surprised he's divorced. He's rude to women. He has no Christmas spirit bone in his body, which we kind of talked about. That's the point. He's a liar. He's completely selfish. And he knows it. He says, I could say something rude and sarcastic to Neal. Like, he knows he's a jerk. Like, wow. And also really sad, like, Charlie doesn't want to stay with his dad on Christmas. Like, his mom is leaving and he's like, do I have to stay? And I'm just like, wow.
I promise, we're talking sunrise, you're here.
Right.
Yeah, it's really sad. Also, just like, I talked about this with Reed in the Honey, I Blew Up the Kid video. The dad cliche, not being able to cook. Yeah. I despise that cliche. I grew up with a dad that is an excellent cook. Your dad's an amazing cook. Yeah. Reed is an amazing cook. Like, Eric, okay. But Eric can cook. Eric will grill for me, he'll do what, but, so I hate this whole, like, men can't cook cliche, especially dads that can't cook cliche in the films. It's really, like, I get that we're trying to set up that he's a terrible person and then he's gonna become Santa Claus. Like, how's that gonna happen? And I still don't know, because he has no growth. But I just hate the cliche.
And also, it, like, compounds that cliche when they get to Denny's and there's all these single dads with their kids. Yeah. And he's like, oh, burnt the turkey.
And he's got, like, a burn on
yeah.
I hate it. It's all dead. Like, there's not a mom that can't cook. There's not people who just didn't want to cook a Christmas Eve dinner. Like, it's a Christmas Eve dinner. What's that? Like,
or have time to do that.
Yeah. People work. Like, nurses don't get off.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like we wouldn't be as mad if there was, like, actual growth. Like, if he actually learned a lesson instead of just all of a sudden he's magically nice and Santa. Yeah. Like, if there was an actual arc for him and he learned lessons and he apologized.
Yes.
He never says any kind of, like, hey, sorry I kidnapped my own kid from you. He's just like, here, you should stay here with your mom.
Yeah.
Never an apology. Nothing, he's just all of a sudden, like, magically
like
Santa.
I'm Santa and I know you're gonna forgive me because magic.
Because magic. So I feel like we'd be a little bit more forgiving of his deplorableness in the beginning if he had an actual arc. But because he's just all of a sudden magically Santa, it's like, no, you were a turd.
Yeah. Neal was the one who told Charlie there's no Santa?
No, it was a kid at school.
Right.
And then Neal didn't say the kid's full of crap. Neal said Santa's more of a feeling or a state of mind.
Right. And then Laura just kind of, like, went along with it, and I do agree with you there, like...
Should have been a conversation.
It definitely should have been a conversation between Scott and Laura, and not Laura and Neal. and them just deciding, like, oh yeah, we're gonna crush that little imaginary dream for Charlie, and
without talking to his dad
right,
about it.
and tell Scott later, like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of, like, really special that Scott did want to, what's the word I'm looking
Keep
for?
that for him?
Yeah, like, maintain, like,
His, you know.
his innocence.
Yeah.
I guess you could say, and, I do think that's really sweet.
Yeah. Also, Neal.
Yeah.
I am on a constant back and forth about this man. First of all, I like that Neal is like a psychiatrist, and they keep saying psychiatrist, and he keeps saying a psychiatrist is not a doctor. Psychiatrist is a doctor. They can prescribe medication. A psychologist is not a doctor. They cannot prescribe medication. So if they were trying to go for psychologist, fine, but that's incorrect. So anyway, psychiatrist, besides that, psychiatrist, I like that can have the open conversations. And, like, I love that Charlie says he listens to me. I like Neal. Like, I love that, and I love that Neal is sensitive to that stuff and wants to talk about that stuff. What I hate is Neal's entire disregard for the fact that Scott is Charlie's dad and definitely should be included in the important decisions for Charlie. And I think sometimes Neal has oversteps.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a completely different situation than situations I'm familiar with, but you are officially, like, now that you're married in, you're a step-parent, you have become a co-parent to two other parents, not just Laura. You're now a co-parent with Scott and Laura, and even though you don't like Scott, doesn't mean you get to cut him out of decisions. That is Charlie's father.
Yeah.
And the whole, like, when Neal is the one that says, we don't think Charlie spending time with you was a good idea, that is so inappropriate in my mind. Like, I can't handle that. That's just a no-no for me.
Right. And when, at this point, like, Scott is, like, in basically full transformed Santa, like, he's fat and has the beard and the white hair. Like, he is Santa, and, that scares them. And Neal is like, well, there's only one thing we can do. And that is to take away his custody.
Yeah.
And, like, that's
stemming all from Neal.
Yeah.
Laura, like, you can tell Laura has not wanted to take away custody because Charlie loves his dad, obviously, especially at this point. Like, maybe earlier in the film when he was like, I hate it here. Mm-hmm. She maybe, if he kept being like that, would have done something. But the fact that Charlie is now like, I love my dad, I want to see him all the time, whatever. The fact that, like, she never was like, oh, we'll just take away his custody. And it comes from Neal, like, ick. I hate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
And they're even at the custody meeting, like, they're about to speak with the judge. And Laura even says, like, are you sure this is the right thing to do? I don't know if we should be taking away his she says visitation, but it's basically
custody, 'cause he gets him overnight.
But
and Neal's the one that's like, we have to shake Scott somehow.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, ew.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Neal, yeah. But, like, also, like, I really tried to be like, okay, but, like, imagine if this was happening to you, though.
Right.
Like, imagine if your ex-husband was literally transforming himself physically to look like Santa and was telling your child that he was Santa.
Right.
Like, you would think that person's insane.
Yeah.
And you would be like, okay, what do we do? And, like, if anything, I'd be more concerned for Scott and be like, can we get Scott into some kind of situation? Like, get him into therapy or get him into some kind of inpatient just to check what's going on,
Yeah.
Or sit down and have an actual conversation with him. They're always just like, we're taking Charlie, or you're insane, or whatever. Like, they don't sit down and are like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. Why are you doing this? They just assume.
Yeah.
There's just a lot to it.
Yeah.
The freaking elves everywhere in the film.
Oh my gosh.
Mariah noticed toward the beginning in Charlie's classroom there was an elf, and when Charlie says, my dad is Santa, every kid laughs but the elf. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, no way. So then throughout the film, we were noticing anytime there's like a giant group of kids, there was at least one elf somewhere. Like when kids are lining up to wait to sit on his lap at the soccer game, there's an elf in line, but not in line. They're behind the bench compared to in front of the bench, just waiting. And I'm like, what? There's just elves throughout the entire film. Kudos to Mariah for noticing the first one, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have noticed the rest.
Yeah. That was actually really cool.
That was cool to notice that, because I didn't notice that on my watch through on Monday, so then watching it with you the second time.
Yeah. And obviously at the end you always notice the elves, at the very end when all the kids are lining up, they're like, let Santa go, and all this kind of stuff, and then there's like a bunch of like children and parents, and then there's like the scattered elves. Like you always notice those at the end, but seeing them
throughout the movie.
Yeah, just to like kind of watch over him, I guess, or whatever. But like,
and the kids, I'm sure.
Yeah, super cool.
The kid from Prince Brad and the Whipping Boy is in this. He's much older. He's obviously better in this because he's like a walk-on.
I did think, however, the like makeup and the costuming to make him Santa and even like have his shirt up and like see that big belly, like that was really good.
Yeah, the makeup's excellent. I just realized this. When he takes Charlie that night, that's Thanksgiving, he doesn't bring him back till Christmas. He has him for a month.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize Charlie is away from them and kidnapped for a month. I never realized that until now, because he doesn't bring him back till Christmas when he's delivering the presents.
And now it makes sense that like they have the police involved and all this kind of stuff.
Time flies in this movie. When I was younger, I didn't realize it took place over a year. I thought it was like just Christmas permanently or something. Like, I don't know. But obviously it takes place over a year. But then I didn't realize like he's due back Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So Bernard comes and gets them at Thanksgiving, and he doesn't bring him back till Christmas. He's got him for a month at the North Pole.
Yeah.
That's not right.
My last note is just how I love, like, when Laura finally, like, concedes and believes that Scott is Santa.
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, I need to burn these custody papers. Like, that was so wrong, and
I just love Laura in general. We haven't talked about her enough. Laura's character in general is probably one of the most genuine. Mm-hmm. Because she just, like, you can tell how much she loves Charlie. You can tell she's definitely his mother. And you can tell that even though Scott is terrible, she still wants Charlie to be in his life and have a relationship with him, and that to be there. And even though Scott is terrible, you can still tell that she has some kind of love for him. Mm-hmm. And then I just am obsessed with the fact that she is so willing to believe the magic of it.
Yes.
Like, Neal is such a denier because he's so, like, logical and analytical. Mm-hmm. And she's the one, because she loves her child so much, is the first one to realize the magic of it all and that it's real. And she's like, oh my god, you actually, like, are Santa. Like, and I'm obsessed with it. I agree with you completely. That's everything I have. Everything you have.
Yep.
What would you rate the film?
I would say, because it has like such a nostalgic piece to it for me, I would go with like a 6 or a 7, probably more like a 7. Okay,
so you're doing, what should we do? Reindeers?
Sure.
Reindeers. And mine's a 6. My final rating is a 6. Reindeers out of 10. Our total movie count is. Parent death toll and crack count are still the same. If you want to keep up with what movie I'm watching when, follow me on Instagram or Twitter. You'll find out what movie I'm watching when. I put up videos every Monday and Friday and sometimes Wednesday. You can't follow her on anything, so just comment that you love her a lot. Thanks so much. Join my Patreon because it's fire over there. I'm editing well, you already have it, but currently in my current life, I'm editing the Lion King behind the scenes, and it's already super long. So go enjoy that on Patreon. Until next time, comment, like, subscribe, and I don't know if you are, so you do, and don't be honestly Scott about it.
Scott Calvin.
Yeah, and also, I don't know, who else is mean? Like, is there a bad person in the movie? Not really. Scott. He's the worst person in the movie at the beginning.
He is.
Okay, don't be Scott at the beginning of the film.
You are the popping queen.
Young and sweet. Popping everything.